Hello everyone, it's Refresh, and I'm here to bring you a battle between two Dominaria Seal decks and the Face the Hydra Challenge deck from Theros. On the left, in the gold sleeves, we have a Azdan deck, and on the right, we have a Rakdos deck. We will be using two hero cards. The first hero card is the Harvester. It will let us tap to draw and discard a card each turn. And we will also be using the Avenger, which you can pay 3 and give target creature you control Death Touch until end of turn. Now we'll start by drawing 7 cards apiece. Abzan has a Skittering Surveyor, Swamps, Memorial to Unity Forest, Gideon's Reproach, and Eviscerate. And that's probably enough to get started, so we'll go ahead and keep this hand. Rakdos has a Mountain, Urza's Tome, Jorah's Familiar, Swamp, Eviscerate, and Rampaging Cyclops. I think that's probably enough to keep as well, so we'll keep that, and we will go into our first turn. For our very first turn, we will play a Memorial to Unity tapped here, and we will play a Mountain here. And we will pass the turn to the Hydra. The Hydra will cast the top card, which is Disorienting Glower. Players can't cast spells until the Hydra's next turn, which will prevent us from casting spells. The Hydra will hit us for 3 damage, because there are 3 heads, and will go down to 17. And then at the end of the Hydra's turn, we will use the Harvester to draw and discard. Abzan draws a Song of Freyalise, which we will keep, and we will discard Gideon's Reproach instead. And then Rakdos will draw Jargle, Glutton of Urborg, which we will keep, and we will discard Urza's Tome instead. And then we will untap. Abzan will draw a Plains. Rakdos will draw a Fiery Intervention, and we will go to turn 2. For our second turn, we will play a Plains here, and on this side, we will play a Swamp. Since we cannot cast spells this turn, we will pass the turn on to the Hydra. The Hydra will cast the top spell, which is Unified Lunge. Unified Lunge deals X damage to each player, where X is the number of heads on the battlefield. There are 3 heads, we'll take 3 damage, and then we'll take another 3 damage to take 6 damage total, taking us to 11. And then at the end of the Hydra's turn, we will use the Harvester to draw and discard. Abzan draws a Woodland Cemetery, which we will keep, and we will discard a Swamp. Rakdos draws a Mountain, which we will keep, and we will discard Fiery Intervention. Now we untap. Abzan draws a Forest. Rakdos draws a Varix Bladewing. We will go ahead and play another Mountain here, and we will play the Woodland Cemetery here. We will tap all 3 of these to play the Skittering Surveyor here, and we will draw out another Plains. Here it is, it's in our hand, we will shuffle. Rakdos cannot play anything, so we will pass the turn. It is now the Hydra's turn. The Hydra will cast the top card, which is Torn Between Heads. Tapped up to 2 heads, they don't untap during the Hydra's next untap step. Torn Between Heads deals 5 damage to each player. 2 heads have been tapped. We'll take 5 damage each to go to 6 at the end of the Hydra's turn, and we will take another damage from the remaining Hydra head to go to 5. At the end of the Hydra's turn, we will use the Harvester to draw and discard. Abzan draws a Sergeant at Arms, which we will keep. We will discard a Forest. Rakdos draws a Jousting Lance, which we will keep, and we will discard the Jorah's Familiar. Now we'll untap. We'll draw. Abzan draws a Llanowar Elves. Rakdos draws a Mountain. We'll go ahead and play a Mountain, and we will play a Plains. We'll tap 2 Plains and a Woodland Cemetery for black to use the Avenger and to give Skittering Surveyor Death Touch, and then we will attack with the Skittering Surveyor into the Hydra head, killing it. Each player will gain 2 life to go up to 7. We will check to see if there are any new heads. There are no new heads. On the second main phase, we will cast 1 Llanowar Elves, and we will cast a Rampaging Cyclops. Then we will pass the turn to the Hydra. The Hydra will play its topmost card, which is another Hydra head. We will take 1 damage from that Hydra head to go to 6. At the end of the Hydra's turn, we'll use the Harvester to draw and discard. Abzan draws a Vicious Offering. Rakdos draws a Gitu Journey Mage. We will discard the Gitu's Journey Mage, and we will discard the Vicious Offering. Now we'll untap. We'll draw. Abzan draws a Sergeant at Arms. Rakdos draws a Swamp. We'll go ahead and play the Swamp and a Forest. We will attack with the Rampaging Cyclops into the Standing Head to kill it, gaining each of us 2 life to go up to 8. On the second main phase, we'll cast the Sergeant at Arms Kicked. We'll get 2 soldier tokens with it, and we'll also cast Yargle, the Glutton of Urborg, and then we will pass the turn to the Hydra. The Hydra will untap. The Hydra will draw. It will cast Growth of the Stump, put exactly 2 cards named Hydra Head onto the battlefield from the graveyard. If you can't reveal the top card of the Hydra's library until you reveal a head card, put that card on the battlefield and the rest into the Hydra's graveyard. There are exactly 2 heads here. We will add them to the battlefield. We will take 4 damage and go to 4 each. At the end of the Hydra's turn, we'll use the Harvester. Abzan will draw a Slimefoot. Rakdos will draw a Cast Down. We will discard the Eviscerate, and we will discard the other Eviscerate. We'll untap. We'll draw. Abzan draws a Plains. Rakdos draws a Mountain. We'll play a Mountain and a Plains. We will play a Song of Frailes, which gets a counter and gives all creatures the ability to make 1 mana of any sort. We'll tap out to play another Kicked Sergeant at Arms, giving us 2 more soldier tokens. And we'll tap again to play Slimefoot, the Stowaway. And then we will attack with both Yargle and Rampaging Cyclops to kill 2 Hydra Heads, gaining us 4 life apiece to go back up to 8. We'll see if there are any new Hydra Heads. There's 1 new Hydra Head. We'll play a Jousting Lance, and then we'll go to the Hydra's turn. The Hydra will cast its topmost card, which is Disorienting Glower. Players can't cast spells until the Hydra's next turn. While that is on the stack, Rakdos will cast Down on the Ravenous Brute Head, killing it, gaining us 2 life apiece to go up to 10, and a card each. Abzan draws a Forest. Rakdos draws a Stronghold Confessor. We will see if there are any new heads. There are no new heads. And then the Hydra will do 2 damage, taking us back down to 8 each. And then we will use the Harvester. Abzan draws a Forebear's Blade, and Rakdos draws a Mountain. We'll discard a Mountain, and we will discard a Swamp. Now we'll untap. Abzan will draw and get a Saproling Migration. Rakdos will draw and get a Swamp. We'll play the Swamp. We'll play the Forest. The Song of Frailes should have gone up to the second counter, giving everybody the ability to tap for mana. We will tap all of the little guys to cast Saproling Migration Kicked, giving us 4 Saprolings. We'll play the Forebear's Blade. We'll equip the Forebear's Blade on a Sergeant at Arms. We will attack with 1 Rampaging Cyclops and the Forebear's Blade equipped Sergeant at Arms to kill the 2 remaining Hydra Heads. They die. We gain 4 life apiece to go to 12. We will reveal cards to see if there are any new heads. There are no new heads, and so the Dominaria sealed decks defeat the Face the Hydra challenge deck from Theros, and we will go to game 2. We are back for game 2. We are playing difficult mode with 4 Hydra heads. We will begin by drawing 7 cards apiece and seeing how it goes. Abzan has a Forebear's Blade, Forest, Sergeant at Arms, Llanowar Elves, Sergeant at Arms, Plains, and Shauna Sishe's Legacy. I think this is a decent start thanks to the Llanowar Elves, so we'll keep that. Rakdos has Voltaic Servant, Rampaging Cyclops, Eldest Reborn, Kelvin Overseer, Soul Salvage, Swamp, and Swamp. I think this is a little short of a good playable hand. I think I would want a little bit more land or something more in the way of earlier plays, or at least a mountain. So we'll go ahead and ship this. Because we're playing multiplayer, we will go back to 7 after the first mulligan. Okay, now we have a swamp, a Windgrace Acolyte, a swamp, a Stronghold Confessor, a swamp, and a Keldon Overseer. This isn't actually better, but I think because we have 2 cards that could theoretically be played, then we will go ahead and keep this hand. Let's start with our very first turn. We will play a Forest, tap, and play a Llanowar Elves, and Rakdos will play a Swamp and pass turn. It will now be the Hydra's turn. Hydra will play the topmost card, which is Unified Lunge. We take X damage equal to the number of heads on the battlefield. There are 4, so we'll take 4 damage plus another 4 to go to 12. At the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Abzan draws a Plains, and Rakdos draws a Mountain. We're definitely keeping the Mountain, and we can probably discard a Swamp. On this side, we will discard a Sergeant at Arms. Now we'll untap. We'll draw. Abzan draws a Forest. Rakdos draws Varix. We'll go ahead and play a Mountain over here, and we'll play a Plains over here. We'll tap out for a Forebear's Blade, and then we will pass the turn to the Hydra. The Hydra will cast the top card, which is Swallow the Hero Whole. Each player exiles a creature he or she controls until the Hydra's next turn. When a head leaves the battlefield, return the exiled cards to the battlefield under their owner's control. So the Llanowar Elves has been exiled until a head leaves the battlefield. We'll take 4 damage each to go to 8. We will use the Harvester at the end of the turn. Abzan draws a Plains, and we'll discard that Plains. Rakdos draws a Josuvest Lich Knight, which we will keep, and we will discard the Windgrace Acolyte. We'll untap. We will draw. Abzan draws a Saproling Migration. Rakdos draws a Voltaic Servant. We will play a Swamp. And we will play Keldon Overseer, which enters the battlefield with haste. We will also play a Forest. And we will play Shanna, Sisay's Legacy. We will attack with the Keldon Overseer into one of the Hydra heads, killing it. As it dies, we'll get 2 life each to go to 10, and we will get the Llanowar Elves back. We will see if there are any new heads. There are no new heads. And then we will pass the turn to the Hydra. The Hydra will cast the topmost card, which is Swallow the Hero Whole. We've seen this before. We will exile a creature each. We will exile Shanna, Sisay's Legacy in this case, as well as the Keldon Overseer. We will take 3 damage each to go to 7. And then at the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Abzan draws a Plains and discards that Plains. Rakdos draws a Swamp and discards the Voltaic Servant. We will untap. We'll draw. We have a Gideon's Reproach here and a Mountain here. We'll play the Mountain over here, Plains over here. We'll equip the Forebear's Blade to the Llanowar Elves, and we will attack a Hydra head to kill it. Hydra head dies. We get 2 life each to go up to 9. We'll see if there are any new Hydra heads. There are no new Hydra heads. On the second main phase, we will cast 1 Stronghold Confessor, kicked. It enters the battlefield as a 3/3, and then we will pass the turn to the Hydra. The Hydra will cast its topmost card, which is Unified Lunge. We'll take X damage, whereas X equals the number of heads on the battlefield, so we'll take 2 and then another 2, take 4 damage to go to 5 each. At the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Abzan will draw a Grun the Lonely King. Rakdos will draw an Eviscerate. We will discard the Eviscerate, and we will discard the Gideon's Reproach. We'll untap. We'll draw. Abzan draws a Plains. Rakdos draws a Jousting Lance. We'll play a Swamp. We'll play a Plains. We will attack with the Stronghold Confessor and the Llanowar Elves to kill the remaining Hydra heads. We'll gain 4 life apiece to go back up to 9. We'll see if there are any new heads. There's 1 new Hydra head. We will tap out to cast Grun the Lonely King, and we will cast Josuvest Lich Knight. Oh, we get these guys back. And then we will pass to the Hydra. The Hydra will cast the topmost card. Players can't cast spells until the Hydra's next turn. The Hydra will do 1 damage to each of us, taking us down to 8. At the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester to draw and discard. Abzan draws a Forest. We will discard the Forest. Rakdos draws a Eldest Reborn. We'll keep that and discard the Swamp. We'll untap. We'll draw. Abzan draws a Woodland Cemetery. Rakdos draws a Mountain. We'll play the Mountain. we will play the Woodland Cemetery. It comes in the battlefield untapped because we control a forest. And then we will attack the remaining Hydra head with the bladed Llanowar elves to kill it. We'll gain 2 life apiece to go up to 10 each. We'll see if there are any new heads. There are no new heads, and so the Dominaria sealed decks win the day, defeating the Hydra challenge deck from Theros. Let me know what you thought about these games. Hit like if you enjoyed this video. Hit subscribe if you'd like to see more such videos. In the next video, we'll be taking these 2 decks up against the Battle of the Horde deck from Born of the Gods. Until then, this was Refresh. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.